Oh blimey, how do I start this one? The fans of Spider-Man 2, the movie game, 2004, can be fucking rabid. So if this channel ever goes viral, it's gonna be from the backlash to this video. But I've got to be honest here. Spider-Man 2 isn't all that great of a game. Stop it. Get your grubby little fingers away from that touchscreen and actually hear me out, you reactionary little gremlins. It ain't all that great of a game today. And yes, that really does matter. This script isn't hard to write because of the potential backlash, but because my entire reason for writing it, the reason why I finally got my shit together to start uploading on this channel, is because of the comparisons. It was too frustrating to constantly hear a fantastic modern game being belittled, being accused of being inferior, or often just straight up bad, to a 20-year-old game from what? 2 to 3 console generations ago? This script is hard to write because the constant and often unpleasant comparisons have ingrained themselves into my stunted little brain. I've started to think like them. So to combat this, I'm going to force myself to be as fair as I possibly can. Every time that I make a comparison, I'm going to interrupt myself to ask, is this fair given the age gap? I was like 11 when this game came out, so I'm familiar with old and creaky games. I can do it. Spider-Man 4 isn't great, but it really does have some fun stuff in it, and I'm genuinely impressed with some aspects purely because it's so old. First, I want to point out the 2 caveats that you should bear in mind as I speak. 1, I was pretty rushed to get through this game. I'm still figuring out the time management for these projects. 2, did I forget already? I'm trying really, really hard not to let my own reactionary bias influence my opinions on this. But nobody can 100% set aside their bias. Anybody who could wouldn't actually be human anymore, given that bias is something we evolved to use in daily life. So let's get started on this retrospective of Spider-Man 2, the movie game, 2004. So obviously, Spider-Man 2, the movie game, 2004, is based off of the 2004 movie Spider-Man 2. Am I doing this right? You sure? No? Fuck it. Spider-Man 2 was written by Alvin Sargent. I don't care who the director was, the authors never get enough credit. It stars Tobey Maguire as the titular character.
Don't get excited, YouTube. Titular just means the character the movie or game was named after.
Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane Watson, and the legendary Alfred Molina as Dr. Octavius. Oh, and Bruce Campbell's in there too. I mention these guys specifically because they reprise their roles in the game. The story of the movie follows the fall of the great Dr. O as a big experiment fails, resulting in the death of his wife Rosie Octavius and the fusion of fuck it, you know the plot, don't lie to me, and it barely shows up in the game. Yep, the story of the movie barely shows up in its video game tie-in, but that's for later. The game was published by Activision, but more importantly, it was developed by Treyarch for PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Xbox, by Vicarious Visions for DS and PlayStation Portable, and Digital Eclipse for Game Boy Advance and the N-Gage.
The fuck is an N-Gage? We've never heard of that.
Oh god, I fucking found it. What is with these hands? It feels, oh shit, it feels like a horror movie or something. It's for a fucking mobile phone. The Fizz Factor,
and what a name that is,
developed a version for Windows that was different. The games were released on all platforms on June 29th, 2004, except for the DS and PSP, which were released a whole year later? Seriously? Come on guys, what the fuck? Michael McChristian returns for the soundtrack and is joined by German industrial band KMFDM for some reason. If you were curious like me, the name is Kein Mehrheit für die Mittled.
AKA, no pity for the majority.
Seriously though, industrial rock in a Spider-Man game? Like, maybe if they had showed up in the movie, or if Morbius, the kick-ass not Jared Leto vampire, was a main character, I could get it. Industrial and goth go quite well. Whatever. The game was written by Matthew B. Rhodes, directed by Tomo Moriwaki, and that's all I have the patience to explain. Except J.K. Simmons returns.
There are no shots of Spider-Man damaging the reactor.
For the PSP only, which I didn't play. Still, that version looks sort of interesting, so I might give it a go sometime. I have this really nice matte black PSP buried somewhere. The game was received incredibly well, and despite what I'll say later, I'm totally not surprised. For the time, it really was revolutionary. There were complaints about the repetitive and oft-times annoying side missions, and the combat was also seen as a small flaw alongside the frustrating levels. But the swinging and graphics were highly praised, and for good reason. The game may look... No, that's for later. All in all, for a movie tie-in made in 18 months, they did a damn fine job. I mean, seriously, it wasn't just the first game again with a new story, which it could have been. It was an entirely new experience. Open world, new mechanics, while barely following the movie, which meant writing an entirely new story. Fucking props to Treyarch, man. There was unfortunately some cut content due to time restraints. They had to drop the Scorpion. I would have loved to protect him from the also cut Craven, who's once again on the... Oh shit, I didn't actually mean to make that pun. Anywho, on to the story. Except, I had to rewrite this section of the script like 3 times because the pacing is super jarring and the way you switch between subplots is whiplash inducing. You don't notice as much while playing because most plot points are little more than an excuse to get you into the gameplay. But when you try to summarize it like I am, ouch, my neck. So I've decided to split the summary into 3 parts to try and smooth out each individual storyline. We'll be starting with Mysterio because while there is a little overlap, its closure feeds into a part of the second storyline. The next part will be Black Cat and Peter's personal life. These elements are integral to each other and can't be separated as they are the same subplot. We all know that Black Cat is supposed to be a stand-in for Peter losing his powers, because 2018 taught us that powerless gameplay can suck. And finally is the Dr. Octopus storyline. This is last not just because it's the finale, but it also starts later and has no overlap with the other subplots. So Mysterio... Wait, no, I still need to copy and paste the introduction first. The story of 2004, as I'm going to call it, is of particular interest to me, as I'm going to put in the title, or maybe the thumbnail. Heck, maybe I'll split it over them both. 2004 is a solid Spider-Man comic book story with a movie plot forced into it. It's like an older brother being forced to take his underdeveloped little brother to the park. Mommy's busy, you can look after the brat. Like seriously, for the first 2 acts, Doctavius only shows up to remind us that this is in fact a movie tie-in. Kinda like a mom who butts into her daughter's high school life in order to relive her own. The really important story involves Mysterio, with a saucy Black Cat subplot. Doctopus, I wrote that as Doc Octopus, is barely relevant and is not needed for anything more than a dramatic boss fight like a dad who... No, I don't have a flawed analogy for this one. I'm gonna quickly slip in that the pacing for the story can be odd. Like that older brother into his train. Fine. The game is split into chapters, and each chapter has a number, not always the same number, of tasks to complete before the story continues. Except for the few times I had the story progress before completing these tasks. Presumably, some chapters are split into further sections for different story beats that will begin, well, when they want to begin. And it can be pretty jarring. And it was trainers. I was gonna say, slip into his trainers. Dirty fucking gremlins. Also, just like Marvel's Spider-Man 2018, which will from now on be referred to as 2018, the 2004 game ignores actual time, or even a facade of actual time, and will pretend that things happened between the scenes you see, such as parting with a character only to almost immediately have an appointment with them. In 2018, Pete is kicked out of his apartment, but manages to find time to move his stuff to the lab amidst all the gameplay. It's super jarring to me. Anyway, onto the story. For real this time. So we get a basic intro with Spidey whining about his life. I mean, in fairness, it's about more than that, but come on. Anyway, reality shatters, and the voice of Bruce Campbell echoes from the heavens.
Well, sequel time already, huh?
To give New York a brief tutorial on how to be Spider-Man. Comic book New York is a weird place. Nothing really happens for a bit, starting the player off slowly to learn the game and to get a bit of context. Pete is studying with fuck. I can't think of a good name for Dr. Scales. Yeah, that'll do. Doc Connors name drops Octavius, and that's about it. Oh, and of course, Pete was late. Mysterio! We begin the first storyline with John Jonah Jameson Sr. cooing over this Quentin Beck fella who is boasting about how he's able to prove that Spider-Man is a fraud. Jameson immediately fires Peter, but our old boy isn't worried because Jameson is always firing him. It's just how they flirt. Pete's job safety is proven though when Robbie Robertson gives him a more generic job, one that really feels like a side quest. It's worth briefly mentioning that during this mission, Spidey mentions that Beck is spreading rumors that he doesn't have powers.
I have enough trouble without someone trying to convince thugs that I don't have powers.
This literally never comes up again. Eventually, Beck's boasts result in a public, televised challenge against Spider-Man, where the hero's grit will be tested with 2 different challenges. This takes place at the sports arena, and I just want to say that while playing 2018, I would swing past this building all the time and wonder what it was. So it's actually really nice to get an answer here. A very clear answer. I don't know why I improv that. These challenges are actually where I first started having fun in this game. Somehow, they are supposed to prove that Spidey is a fraud, but they really don't. At best, they might prove that Spidey has performance anxiety. I suppose they could potentially prove that he doesn't have powers, but would he have gotten such a reputation if he didn't? I think it's safe to say that option is off the board. Still, Beck is a master of special effects, not critical thinking. And if he had succeeded, then as soon as Jameson got his inky little mitts on the story, it would have been enough to fool most people. At least until Spidey saved the city again. Or enough time had passed. People have very short attention spans. Anyway, the first challenge is to toss prisoners... Is this legal? Is this ethical? Whatever. You compete with Beck to toss prisoners into specially made pits. The human rights, moral implications of this is horrendous, but whatever. Beck stands no chance. Especially as the game actually tells you how to best do this. And this is actually a really great section for practicing the grab move, which I would proceed not to use for the rest of the game. Then, we get a strange sort of public stealth obstacle course, which doesn't teach you anything you'll need later, but is actually really fun, mostly. So, it's a really enjoyable way of getting you accustomed to the wall crawl. Plus, being inside a building and being able to tell which direction you're facing as such really gives you a feel for how it would be to climb surfaces like Spider-Man. The camera can be a bit of a pain, but I reckon that would be really hard to program for this sort of thing anyway. So, respect. Good use of checkpoints too. Very good use. Life-saving, you could say. Because there is, as will be common for all of the good parts of this game, one major flaw. You see, Bex set up a bunch of floating surfaces and a railgun. If you fall off of the surfaces, then he'll shoot you 3 times and you're out. That's sports. But because of the distance you have to run to get back to the start, the speed, and the accuracy of his shots, chances are he'll hit you 2 to 3 times on your way back. Doesn't matter how you move, if you try to dodge, the gun doesn't activate his spider sense, he will hit you every time. This kind of makes the whole 3 shots thing more like an insult than an actual game mechanic. And it's almost better to wait for him to shoot you. Almost. After all, there is a chance that you'll have 1 hit remaining when you reach safety. And he takes so long to fire when you're just standing there? Well, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. Add to that the generous checkpoints. Run and maybe die, or stand and definitely die, but with the generous checkpoint saving you from repeating the easier parts. This is my new trolley problem. Anyway, you win, eventually, leaving Beck to sulk. Funny thing though, on the loading screen out, Spider-Man acknowledges that the motionless and 2D audience were actually fake.
Even the audience isn't real. Beck is the real phony here.
Like, how many games include their own limitations in the
I
plot?
guess I should thank you though.
Silent Hill
I
maybe?
really needed some
Anything
good press
else?
for a change.
Nothing particularly bad happens to Beck. The announcers ask him some uncomfortable questions, and Spidey mocks him a little. But you can see him stewing in his embarrassment far too much. It's almost like it's not his fault he openly challenged a superhero on live television. Some unrelated stuff happens, and then we're back to Beck. Jameson sends Pete to take pictures at Beck's latest declaration, this time taking place at the theatre. Only he's not there! An alien calling himself Mysterio is there in his place, and you already know where this is going. I love how comic book Mysterio's story gets from here on out. I actually love it. Beck has finally gone and done it, the bleeding madman. He went and put the fishbowl on his head. I always have to wonder if the original designers realised what they were doing with the globe. Sure, it works well for any fishbowl or snow globe illusions, but I don't think we saw anything of the sort in his first few appearances. Did they think it looked cool? Ominous? Because I kind of agree, but surely they saw the fishbowl jokes ahead of time and were giggling to themselves. Do you think they had to justify the design to Stan or whoever the editor was? I should actually look that up.
We did, and couldn't find anything.
Anyway, Mysterio summons some fantastic fishbowl-wearing drones and sets fire to the theatre trying to kill the reporters. I guess this was a rehearsal before truly revealing himself to the world? Whatever. Spidey arrives and has to save the reporters while fighting drones and while playing the floor is a flaming inferno of death. We also get to see some weaknesses of the swinging here, one that will get extra annoying in a moment. What's more, I know I wasn't the only person who had trouble gaining the altitude needed to get the people to safety here. After playing the game and before writing the script, I watched a couple of other people play different parts of the game, and this section was always a pain. The swinging just doesn't allow you to gain altitude with any degree of practicality, especially in such a small area and with hot death beneath you. Best I could tell, you're supposed to perform a full swing and charge jump at the top of it, but the bottom of the swing has you go lower than you started at, often sending you into the fire. Here's a diagram for you. talk about realistic swinging, but I'm pretty sure in the comics we see Spidey pull himself up in order to account for this effect. I always liked Todd McFarlane's art because there was always excess web flailing about, wrapping around Spider-Man's hands, almost like he was pulling himself up the web line to account for this. And there's my headcanon, almost wrote web cannon. We should use that. Is that his web fluid further contracts once it's exposed to oxygen for a few moments, pulling him up further. Pretty sure in Spider-Man 2018 we actually see this contraction happen when he's webbing someone up. I'll have to double check.
Any excuse to play those games again. No, it doesn't. Our bad.
But here in 2004, it's just annoying. Really, the best approach was often to rely on the charge jump itself for height. Something I often did while traversing or chasing or pretty much any other time. Yeah, actually, I would probably play a superhero game where the main traversal mechanic was carefully charged jumps. Probably with wall crawling or some hover mechanic, maybe manifested platforms, to make up for longer distances or differing heights of rooftops. If anybody out there wants to make that, you have my solemn promise here on record that I will not sue you for stealing it. I would really rather play it. Anyway, you get the NPCs out the way, and Mysterio warns of his space armada going down on Lady Liberty. Coming down. Is that better? I think that's no better, but damn it. Also, I hate this bit. In a large part due to the altitude issue I've already mentioned. The Statue of Liberty has these orbs sticking out of it, and you have to swing up to them and hit them a few times. Literally the only reason I managed this despite the awkward swinging, a jank camera, and a long way down, is because Spidey will fly a good in-game meter or two towards the orb in order to get his hits in. I can't fault his enthusiasm, but that's not right. Spidey can't actually fly, he just looks like he is. And even before this, you have to swing from Mysterio's UFOs to the statue, each one higher up than the last, but given that an important part of the swinging was always that the game automatically aims the web lines at whatever's nearby, sometimes it doesn't. Possibly because you keep swinging so low, it sends you lower and lower, and it's just so unreliable. You just keep falling. I only passed this bit because the game apparently thought I'd fallen into the water close enough to a statue that I might as well just swim here. That, or it took pity on me. No, whatever. I won't be playing this level again, ever. The next one though, that's different. Mysterio isn't giving up yet, and he invites us to his hidden fortress, aka his flats. Sorry Americans, his apartment. There's a hidden lift, oh damn it, elevator behind a bookshelf, which leads to an utterly bizarre underground funhouse carnival thing. This is also a super fun part, but it might be the only exception for the whole, because there is, as will be common for all of the good parts of this game, one major flaw. Thing that I mentioned earlier. Yeah, it's a little disorientating, a little difficult the first time, but that's actually good design, and it has no major glaring flaws, except maybe for the end where it just ends too abruptly. Unfortunately, that's just how the pacing of this game is, and why I'm splitting this story section into subplots. But let's focus on this great section itself. We have inflatable clowns with knives, a room that turns upside down with something looking up or down at us through a skylight. We enter a room with mirrors everywhere and a red eye following us on the ground. Out of the mirrors come awesome distorted Spider-Man reflections with similar abilities and warped voice lines.
Nuts.
Him.
Nuts. Him.
Nuts.
It's so cool. Not much story here though, I'm afraid. Honestly, a lot of the game doesn't really have story, so much as plot points that lead into the action. Once we break the correct mirror, which I somehow did without realizing it, and continued beating my own ass for a while.
Were we winning or losing? You decide.
Hologram.
and discover Mysterio's
Why should I
control
be
room,
surprised?
which, well, ends the mission. There are no leads to follow, no hints, no plot, no ending at all, really.
Uh-huh.
Stuff happens, we chase Black Cat, lose Shocker, and then the movie plot finally begins in earnest.
Your boy is quite the hero.
And then we ignore all that to return to the Bugle. This is giving me some serious whiplash. We are sent off to get pics of a Latvian diplomat, and because I didn't realise that Shocker was in the game, that discovery made me all excited to see Doctor Doom too.
Mr. Jameson.
But no. We do get the moment I'd been waiting for though. A moment spoiled for me long before I considered making this channel. Some dude is screaming about aliens, and although I hear this is common in New York, the players' minds naturally turn to Mysterio, who's robbing a convenience store. Seriously, dude? I'd have been sure that I'd misremembered that spoiler being in such a place.
How
But
low
no,
the mighty have
Ballhead
fallen.
is threatening some stone cashier dude to get petty cash, apparently having used up all his money on that Lady Liberty stunt. You know what? Just watch. Just watch.
You have trifled with my power for the last time. I will not hold back.
Whoa! That was sick, dude!
Brilliant. That's a perfect end for a smoke and mirrors type villain like Mysterio, all while subverting our assumptions of a boss battle.
Quentin Beck, I presume.
Truly a brilliant video game moment. So Spidey takes a pic of this back to Jameson, which naturally gives Jameson a chance to accuse Beck and Spidey of colluding. Thank goodness Beck and the cashier don't realize that Peter is being credited for the photo that they watched Spider-Man take. Black Cat, aka Felicia Hardy. Shut up! I did my best. Sorry. I've just realised something. I scrolled too far. I've just realised that I ordered these sections according to my favourites. The best plot to the worst. That wasn't intentional. I just thought this order worked best, and it was coincidentally in order of preference. It's a shame that I'm ending on a low note, but there are still 5 more charming segments after this, so I could be sure to give you a happy ending. Shit, I did it again. This game starts on or around Petey's birthday, so Harry Osborn is buying lunch for the trio, and this lets us see the tensions in the group, both sexual and otherwise.
Thanks, Harry.
Mind, there is no chemistry between Pete and MJ, and I'm just going to let this statement sit here. Oh, and Pete's late. MJ does set up a meeting with Pete to give him a ticket to her show, and because there's nothing else to say except that Harry is pretty upset at Spidey, let's jump straight to that meeting. Mary Jane tells Pete that she's seeing someone, a guy.
I'm seeing someone now. A guy.
Oh.
The way she clarifies that makes you wonder if in an earlier script she was seeing, well, let's just say herself. Yeah, you have to ignore the first game's ending, as it was based on an earlier script of the movie. The two aren't together, and she doesn't know he's Spidey. Right, so MJ is telling Pete this to try and end the will they won't they between them out of respect or kindness, right? Right? Let's just say, I don't know. I really don't like MJ in the Raimi movies, and this is kind of why. She spends the whole time waiting for Pete to say something, and all the while she hops from prick to person. I meant prick as in person. Jesus Christ, I have to be careful around you people. But yeah, so why can't MJ say something? I hear that there's some kind of societal thing about women not making a first move, but that's just passive and silly. Whatever. Anyway, MJ was obviously expecting something more from Peter, and instead of just being glum and dejected that he doesn't deliver, she gets offended. What? It makes this meeting feel like it was just to goad Pete into getting angry or confessing, and that would be bad enough if her relationship was a lie. But it's not. It's totally gross. And seriously, what did she expect from the poor, downtrodden Peter Parker? Some macho profession of possessive love. Maybe? I did that maybe because I don't think you could hear my question mark. Thankfully, we don't have to find out, because Pete is distracted by something awfully suspicious happening at the art gallery nearby. He leaps at the opportunity to escape this awkward and manipulative situation. Which is fair, because even on a surface reading, anybody would need time to process something like this. It might have been fun to see Pete, struggling to process the love of his life being with somebody else, leap into action here and give himself away to MJ. Sure, that usually works better narratively closer towards the end of the story, and towards something a bit more dramatic than an art theft. But it could work in a number of mediums, but probably not in a game unless it was like a visual novel. Can you imagine Persona Spider-Man? That could be really fun. Not that I've played Persona. Doing this earlier could allow for us to watch both characters come to terms with this reveal. Pete kicking himself for being reckless, leading further into his doubts about being Spider-Man, while MJ has to take time to process the revelation, possibly avoiding him, which would make him feel even worse. This could lead into an emotional climax, right as things are looking bad, with MJ's eventual acceptance and her choice to leave her partner for Pete, giving him the self-confidence to face the trials that he's been buckling under. God, this game has so much more room to play with the story than the first game had. But back to the actual plot. Pete vanishes as he tends to do, and handily handles the thieves. And then, Best Girl Black Cat appears. There is some uncertainty between the two, as well as us, because she appears to just be there, just chilling at an art heist. She denies that she was working with the goons, which isn't her normal MO anyway, which makes it believable. Felicia, I'm using her name because it's far too pretty not to use, despite not being said in the game itself, belittles Spider-Man before fucking off. Not how it usually goes with her, as Felicia really seems to have no interest in Spidey this time round. I think Spidey still assumes she's related to the attempted theft, so we get the first of too many Felicia chases in the game. The hardest part of which is trying to slow down for her, and then waiting for her to catch up to you because you failed not to get ahead. And it's like the devs knew that players wouldn't have a grip on the swinging yet, because it's so easy. And you're better off imitating Felicia by jumping rooftops rather than trying to swing. Plus if, for example, you mess up a charge jump and lag behind, she'll wait for you. Really sends mixed messages, that. Like, does she really think as little of Spider-Man as her words suggest? Or is she maybe a little curious? Equally as ambiguous is that while she is a thief, Spidey believes her when she says she returned stolen items to the police. My webcanon is that Felicia is more of a thrill seeker than a wealth seeker. Anyway, I've talked more about the last two scenes than I have the actual story, so let's go on. Felicia bails. Yeah, that's it. She just buggers off and we let her. And is this normal for men? You see a pretty face in leather and you just let her commit crimes? I'm ace, but that seems to match what I've seen from other men. So Felicia reappears and disappears. Enough said. Can I just say something? I know that Pete being late to everything is a core part of his identity, but this game might just be overusing it.
I can't believe I'm running so late. Still late. I'm sorry for missing class.
Peter, you made it.
MJ and I had a bet going on whether you would actually show up.
Pete's late to the show that MJ gave him the ticket for because of an explosive diamond heist. There may have been other things in there, but I can't spell jewelry. Still, it's not all bad because Felicia shows up to tease Spidey for stalking a girl and her fiancé. God damn! Those are gotta be paper mache, right? Or does she just like super glue them in place? That's not to say it's not all bad because of the breasts. They are pretty shocking, but that's not the point. The point is that Felicia is awesome. Anyway, she shakes Spidey out of his slump
with the promise of beating the shit out of some more art thieves alongside her. Felicia leads us there in another chase, which is somewhat more tolerable thanks to the banter between them.
I think someone used a shrink ray on you. You're so tight.
Very funny. Hang on a second, let me catch up.
Hey, I can be nice. I don't always bite. Unless you want me to.
And then we beat up those art thieves. You might be noticing that there isn't all that much substance to the Felicia bits. Sections. I mean, the Felicia section's not a bit. Oh, bollocks. It's the same thing. And there is plenty of substance to her. Anyway, you're not wrong. I get that she was supposed to be a stand-in for Pete's lost powers as he deals with an identity crisis, but I wouldn't personally have gotten that from the game if someone hadn't already told me. The choice between Felicia and Mary Jane seems more compelling to the player, who doesn't actually get to make a choice, than Spidey himself, who we never really get to see give Felicia a real chance. Anyway, Felicia steals some art and legs it. This is supposed to give Spidey reason to doubt her, but it really comes to nothing.
Are you still sore about that statue? I gave it to the cops already.
Whatever. That movie bit with the bank happens, but that part of the story gets dropped and we're back to stalking MJ and her latest boy. Felicia drops by, apparently stalking him via stalking MJ, because she knows she'll always find him moping somewhere nearby. So you remember Beck's first challenge? The morally dubious one where you've manhandled convicted prisoners into large pits? Well, Herman Schultz, aka the Shocker, was one of them, and used the chance to escape.
One celebrity criminal, Herman Schultz, aka the Shocker.
Does this surprise anyone? Well, it surprised me. I didn't even know my old fave was even in this game. Felicia drags Spidey away from his moping to chase Shocker to the ends of the earth.
Get back here, Shocker! Shocker! You can't escape me! I'll chase you to the ends of the earth!
And yes, we have to chase Felicia first. And this time, there isn't even that much banter to make it worthwhile. We find our shocking boy at a warehouse of sorts.
And welcome back to the channel, everybody. This is Shawka from ShawkaReacts, and today we've got another music teacher reaction and analysis video for you.
And I say of sorts because I don't know what kind of warehouse has 3 great big floor-mounted fans that can blow a full-grown man into the air. The dude is pissed that we found him. But before we can finish him off, our quilt-themed friend gets a hit on Felicia and buggers off while Spidey is simping over her. Yes, another jump in the story, because no matter how hard I try, I just can't smooth it out. We get that artful Mysterio climax in the convenience store. And after Jameson accuses Spidey and Beck of colluding, we pop out, get a cutscene of the one person in the city who actually reads the papers panicking at the mere sight of Spidey, so he gets all angry and worked up before heading back to give Jameson a proper bollocking. But like, couldn't this introspection have happened in the men's room where Pete changes? Save us a loading screen or two? Well, no, because Felicia interrupts Spidey and calms him down. Still, that could have happened in the men's room. It's Shocker time, baby! What? No! Felicia's tracked Shocker down. He's found some spare Shocky stuff for his goons, you dirty bastards. We take out a few of the shock troops before arriving at an old Oscorp space lab thing. Felicia buggers off to find another way in, which apparently works because she's waiting for us when we arrive. I have some advice for this fight. Quiltman has a force field protecting him, and you're supposed to distract him while Felicia turns it off. But you can just hide on one of the platforms nearby, which will shield you from his blasts. It's a little boring, but it saves health, and you can't do anything anyway. So this time we win, and oh geez, we head straight after MJ to miss another show. We are in time to save her from a mugging though, and the two have a chat about her new fiancé. Interestingly, she seems sincere about him now, but as practical as her reasons are for being with him, that he's actually around for her, clearly her heart still belongs to Pete, for some reason. Apparently, we already have another meeting with Felicia, even though we just left her. For some reason, we don't have footage of this file. But we double checked on YouTube and yeah, it went from Felicia to MJ, back to Felicia. But this awkward pacing really isn't the worst of it. Going from Felicia to MJ and back to Felicia really puts into perspective how little chemistry Pete has with MJ and how much Spidey has with Felicia. So Felicia has found us another crime to foil, and this time it's an actual race. And it's fun! Right up until I overshoot the destination and can't clamber back up in time, so Felicia wins. And the crime is just some unimportant high-tech weapon auction, and Felicia deliberately gives us away with a quick... I don't know how she survived this, because if I wasn't dodging, I was dying, and if I was attacking, I was dying. In the end, I found the best approach was just to hide behind a wall and goad the enemies into shooting each other. Spidey gets pissy with Felicia for giving them away like that. Which, what was his plan? Was he gonna walk up carefully and use the talk no jutsu? Felicia rightfully gets pissed off and leaves, leaving Pete to monologue in-game about his secret identity, deciding that Peter is important. Not because he pays the bills or anything sensible like that, but because he can't give up his friends. I made that talk no jutsu joke, but I didn't expect this to get quite so anime. So Spidey chases after Felicia, and holy crap, is he an idiot here. First of all, I didn't realise they were dating, but he breaks up with her. Technically, he says he can't see her anymore, but given the following "let's be friends" line, well, like, dude, there's nothing between you and MJ at this point. Well, Felicia is here, supporting and encouraging while you stalk another girl. Felicia is awesome. There's banter and there's respect, and she's probably also hot. Probably crazy hot, I can't tell. And to make things even worse, Felicia is sad, but she's also happy for him. She's happy that he's finally doing what he wants, even if it means leaving her. You know what? Fuck all of that. Felicia is far too good for this Spider-Man, and she deserves better. Let the mopey little bastard have Little Miss Manipulative. Oh, I was always a Black Cat stan, but now I have another, deeper version to add to my list. I mean, I really like the 2018 version because she's fun, but she doesn't have the depth of 2004. So Spidey just leaves her there, and I'll try not to think of her crying quietly to him. It breaks my heart just to say. He buggers off to find MJ. Does he confess his feelings to her? Does he tell her his secret? Yes! No. So once again, Peter Raimi Parker wants to eat his cake and keep it a secret too. He gets rejected, but this isn't as satisfying as it should be, because we all know the goddamn plot.
Things could never work out. What about the danger? I must have been out of my mind to ask her.
Pete then justifies this to himself by saying he was stupid because knowing his identity would put her in danger. This mopey, self-depreciating brat is really getting on my nerves. Movie plot. So, back at the birthday dinner, Harry offers to introduce Pete to... No, I can't use that name for him. It was just an intrusive thought. It's not even funny. Fine, jeez. He offers to introduce Pete to Octavius. See, I said it wasn't funny. So that happens. And that is all that happens. Besides Rosie inviting Pete for dinner, which happens after Beck. They have dinner, and that's it. Really, they might as well have just shoehorned Octavius into the end, rather than introducing all of these Choc teasers. Eventually, the lab accident does happen, and I have mixed feelings about this part. I like being able to play parts of the movie instead of just sitting there watching it. Heck, my biggest problem with Kingdom Hearts 3 was how often it would just stop your gameplay to make you watch a cutscene. Often just to have dialogue lines that would have worked just as well, if not better, during gameplay. Unfortunately, while you do get to play this part, it sucks. While there is definitely value in a well done ragdoll, but when an unavoidable-ish sphere of doom can send you bouncing from one side of the room to the other, and then possibly back into said sphere of doom to ragdoll again, no. Just no. Do a Kingdom Hearts and give you an ability to recover, or don't do ragdoll. I hated this in Breath of the Wild too. An enemy knocks you down a small hill, and you roll and roll and roll and roll, all the time being peppered with arrows until you die, or fall off a cliff and die. Either give us a fucking recovery option, or don't fucking include ragdoll. There is little worse than being helpless, especially in a medium that is ostensibly a power fantasy. Do you think I play games to feel as pathetic as I do in real life? Every day? No. Anyway, it is cool that we get to play this scene. And it's weird that Pete isn't wearing glasses in the cutscene, but whatever. It's weird that he's wearing glasses in the first place. So we get a neat scene where... What? I didn't discuss the story for the previous scene. And you know the bloody scene. You actually like the movies. Nothing happens except the experiment goes wrong. Let me get to the new stuff. The tentacular octopus visits his old friend, the not yet scaly Connors, asking for help, but then attacks him. This not so subtly shows that he's beginning to fall to the dark side, but is the best time that the game gives us a sense of development for character and story. Melina does a fantastic job, because of course he does, talking to his tentacles and letting them get their thick metal claws into his mind. Unfortunately, it's a very short cutscene. Yes, we know we complained about games having too many cutscenes earlier, but there's a line you have to tread. So there's not much to say except that for once, Pete being late actually put someone in danger. Not sure how this next bit happens in the movie. I did consider watching it before writing this, but I really can't be arsed. I'm just not a fan. But in the game, it's Jameson who tells Pete that Ark escaped hospital and murdered some people. And God, the structure of this story is really starting to get on my nerves now that I'm trying to tell it. We hop straight over to the bank scene, kind of making that last scene redundant, as Pete would be seeing the truth immediately after anyway. But at least we get to play this too. And I've got some more advice for you here. Ark's arms glow yellow when readying an attack, and turn red when you need to dodge. The game doesn't specifically tell you that it's added this new mechanic, and you might be too distracted by Oxhide minions firing spider-sense invisible ragdoll grenades to notice all by yourself. Just take out the thugs and use the slow time thingy to wail on Doc. One-on-one fights are the only time that damn mechanic is of any use. And I said I didn't watch a movie, so I'm pretty sure this is where the train scene happens, right? Our boy Autogun Octavius uses it to distract Spidey, right? Well, here he uses a helicopter. After losing him multiple times because I just couldn't swing fast enough, I discovered by chance that you can web the copter and just hold on. It's cool in principle, but doesn't it kind of lessen the whole chase thing? Especially when it's the only way you can keep up. If it was just like, you can catch him perfectly well by swinging, but this was just like a neat little thing you could do, that'd be sick. But no, it's literally the only way to keep up. The master planner, master something, because his wife's dead, drops little old May Parker, best girl of the movies, in front of the train, letting Spider-Man not stop it, but swing her to safety. And guess what happens next? Nothing. Nothing is next. Eventually, the superior octopus pays Harry Osborn a visit, and they come to a deal. Bring Spider-Man to Harry, and Ock will get the Trinitarian Church or whatever it is. Harry directs the guy, who I'm running out of nicknames for, to Pete, because of course he does. And naturally, we switch back to Peter musing about how good of a friend old Harry is.
Yeah, Harry's been a much better friend than I'll ever be.
Alright, let's make this quick. MJ calls Peter because she really does want to snug him more than Jameson Jr., but our mad doctor interrupts. We get the train scene at last. Sort of. And Octavius gets the Trinity, and Harry gets a face full of existential crisis. We dash to the pier where MJ is tied up. We untie her and get sneak attacked by Octopussy. Then we get a hellish pre-boss battle where we have more stupid ragdolling and swinging too low and into instant death water. It's wonderful because Dr. Pussy can snatch you out of midair while you're uncontrollably ragdolling, and Mary Jane yells, "Watch out!" or something equally inane every single time you get hit. It's also worth mentioning that while the reactor's ragdoll surges feel random, if you turn the music off, you can actually hear it charging up and prepare yourself. Yes, I spent an hour on this encounter without music. We go through all that to get an actual boss battle that's actually pretty cool, and where I learned how his color-coded attacks work. Otto disconnects from the server of life to stop his machine in a violent way that surely should have set off an explosion. Then we have a happy ending with MJ leaving her rich fiancé who's emotionally there for her, for a dirt poor and totally obnoxious superhero who's never there for her. I love Spider-Man.
So, where's your mom?
Parker. She's out buying a new yacht.
Well, what happened? The old one get wet?
Come down here and fight like a man!
I don't suppose I could convince you to come up here and fight like a spider.
And I have since I was a brat. But god damn it, he's really awful in this game. Yeah, well, I will talk about his quips later, I guess, because they are fun. They are good. Oh, yeah, and the credits music stops like halfway through. That was weird. Oh, yeah, and somewhere in all of this, the Rhino appeared. He had nothing to do with anything, though. I don't even know which story to put him in. Gameplay. Right. Now that that abomination is over, it's time to move on to the real abomination. My fucking notes. I didn't do a very good job here, so it gets a little confusing. And I'm going to have to take it step by step, starting with the combat. Yes, I am avoiding the swinging for as long as I can. Unlike Spider-Man the movie game 2002, there is no real tutorial nor practice mode for combat. There were these little mini-games / challenge markers scattered around the city, but I ended up feeling far too tired to give them a real go. Although I did realise later that they might have helped. What we do get is Bruce walking you through a very simple fight to give you the basics. But that's not really enough given that Treyarch put in so much effort to expand the combat. There is a basic punch button, a jump, a web, and a dodge button. On top of this, you can buy upgrades for further combos and techniques. I rarely felt that these were as useful as they were intended. In 2002, I could usually immediately implement new combos into my fights, finding a use for each of them, until the mooks dried up. The only problem was my own memory, and I'd need to practice them in order to properly internalize them. But that's a neurodivergent thing. Here in 2004? Not quite. Let's take the grab for example. Y and then B allows you to web and grab an opponent, letting you pummel or toss them at will. Assuming they aren't a boss, that is. Or that you aren't surrounded, letting thugs wail on you with impunity. Plus, there seemed to be a delay or a straight up lack of responsiveness, as Spidey would hold the goon up and then just stand there and get smacked around. I assume the best way to handle groups, that is the intended way, is to punch one guy into the air and follow them up there. You would proceed to yank his friends up from your position of aerial supremacy until they're all gone. I'm adding here in post that there are also the options of impact web, which as the only way to counter either dodges or blockers is boring if you overuse it. But also, there's the option to counter, but the spider sense is unreliable. And, well, watch this. A counter fight is just so boring. I'll admit, I had a hard time discarding the muscle memory from 2018 and would forget that I had to manually jump to follow them after tossing them into the air. I'll accept that is on me. Plus, admitting this personal fault is a great way to colour the mechanic in my script without just blandly explaining it. But there are two main issues, maybe 2.5 depending on how you count. One, while it's good to unlock further air combos throughout the game, the basic combo is so short and so dissatisfying that it actually discourages you from using it in the first place. Plus, it's basically useless against bosses, a flaw it shares with its 2002 older brother. Given that bosses are supposed to challenge the skills you developed so far, bosses being immune to most attacks defeats the point. 2. It's kind of boring. A good combat system provides multiple ways to approach a given situation, but I found the most effective way of dealing with groups is just totally lame. I'd run around to disperse them. If they gathered around me, I only needed to get a hit once and the others would have me bouncing between them before I could recover. I've already talked about the goddamn ragdoll. And then there is the basic thug's own spider senses and steel arms to deal with. I was pleasantly surprised the first time a thug dodged my web shots. The animation is cool and it adds another dynamic to the fights, and enemies that can block attacks are standard in most games. But when you are swarmed by enemies, all of whom are immune to one of your two main methods of attack, no, immune to your two ways of beginning attacks. Enemies who might be off screen or might aggro Spidey's auto aim towards the completely wrong enemy, one who might be out of the fight entirely, it gets annoying. I would normally expect a combo to break a guard or to have a combo that works around it, but any attack that hits those steely arms causes a knockback. The superpowered hero is knocked back from a normal thug's crossed arms. A lot of the best combos start with a web strike, which can get dodged. So let's summarize. Auto aim frustrates you by aiming a web at an enemy who dodges every time, so you change tactics. You go to punch someone else who blocks every attack. You switch to another goon because you're quickly getting surrounded, so they are everywhere, but he blocks too, as does the next. The next one dodges your webs. You begin to panic. You try to get some distance, but then you have to web attack them from said distance and auto aim target someone who dodges or is already dead. Then you get surrounded and pummeled. That's why the best method is to separate them, running around like a cretin until you can either beat or web one up, and then repeat. Of course, you have to also lure them away from defeated enemies in case Pete chooses that they aren't dead enough yet. I really hope that Spider-Man 3, 2007, fixes this, because I might have to play the game 3 times. Let's do a brief comparison, given that's what drove me to write the script in the first place. In 2018, enemies don't dodge, which is actually kind of a shame, but there are shields for stopping your melee, and batons or bats to counter your web strikes, plus thugs who really slow things down. But Spidey has a variety of options to deal with this, such as the fluid uppercut and auto follow. I don't think I'd mind if that did require a manual follow-up though. There are dodge and attacks to get past blocks or even parries, and a clean, very nice dodge. Add in how smooth the movements are and the variety of gadgets. Well, it might be too fair on the player, maybe too easy at times. And it's annoying when the main challenge comes from numbers or AoE attacks rather than skilled enemies. But it's far better than being bounced between enemies because you can't initiate a fucking combo. It really is all or nothing when it comes to pulling off combos and techniques in general. It's no wonder every side mission includes a full heal on completion. Now don't get me wrong, 2018 isn't a perfect game. That's for another inevitable retrospective, where, despite liking 2018 a lot more than 2004, I might actually have more complaints. So, what about the dodge? What dodge? Kidding, I really don't understand the mechanic, but watch this as you hear me out. Spidey's sense will warn you of danger that isn't even there. so it's impossible to tell if you're failing or if Spidey's dodging an attack that doesn't exist, leaving you open to another attack. Add in the fact that certain attacks don't let you dodge at all, and that the game lies when it tells you you can always dodge no matter what you're doing. Well, let's be positive. The dodge counter moves are pretty cool, but I just wish that the game taught you that the direction you dodge changes the counter attack. I don't even remember where I learned that. A hint marker, perhaps? Finally, the spider sense / reaction time mode. It's crap. Took me ages to figure out the timing for the distracting red circles. And the increased brightness and lingering combat effects will completely obscure the screen. Have fun being ganged up on by thugs that you can't even see. But it is admittedly useful in one-on-one fights where there are less screen obscuring effects and you can use your superior speed to wail on enemies. This was actually how I learned the timing for the red circles and Doc's rave arms mechanic. So let's end this on a positive. The moves and their animations are, in isolation, really cool. You start off with a neat web yank into kick move that is fun, looks cool, and is satisfying to perform. Webbing someone into the air and then slamming them back into the hard ground makes me tingle in the dark places of my psyche. And a good 98% of each boss fight rocks, which sadly leads me into the next part of this section, the boss fights. Each boss encounter is different and can help you learn something new about the combat. The early Rhino fight teaches you to dodge. If you can consider the early Quentin Beck challenges as boss encounters, the first one teaches you about grabbing and throwing enemies. The first Shocker encounter encourages aerial combat. But did you notice that 2%, well 1% is that, like in the first game? Most attacks and tactics you learn in the streets leave you disappointed in the sheets. Impact webs? Useless. Web pools? Useless. Most combos? Yeah, I'm using the rule of 3. The second percent is that there is something stupid frustrating in each one. Beck's pointless 3 strikes out rule. Shocker's AoE move that goes deceptively further than you think and ruins the flow regardless. Ark's part 1 final encounter has you ragdolling and has instant death water ruining an otherwise tense moment. It's a major shame. Let's move on to the minigames. It's interesting to see how 2018 to 2023's minigames were obviously shaped by what was conceived here. The car chases, the hospital runs, and there's even a reference to the infamous balloon minigame, which has to have been deliberate.
Save this kid's balloon from floating away and he made me this. It's the little things that make it all worth it.
On the topic of said balloon missions, yes, they're annoying, and not just because of the constant crying. Trying to get close enough for Spidey to snag the blasted things is frustrating, and trying to web them just causes them to pop. Still, they can actually be quite funny. Hearing the desperate cry of "my balloon" during a firefight tickles me every time. Plus, it's nice that you can just run away with them and they'll follow you around until you move into another district. Finally, I had this odd little glitch where the kid was at a weird angle and his balloon was stuck under a fire escape. There was no way to grab it and the kid wasn't crying. In the end, I popped it and ran away. There are a strange number of people falling off of rooftops in New York, and my webcanon is that Felicia is pushing people off for the lols, counting on you to catch them. Which is unfortunate, because not only are the people who warn you about these accidents often a full block away, but you have to crawl right up their asses before you can web them to safety. Kinda defeats the point of having webs. Another thing that 2023 improved on, although not a whole lot, are the hospital runs. In 2004, a pedestrian will wave you down, like in most of the minigames, and point out a guy with a broken leg who you'll get to a hospital apparently just in the nick of time to put a cast on it, and it's always a guy with a broken leg. Seriously though, pretty sure that waiting for an ambulance would be better for a broken limb than letting it flap about on a web light. Oh wait, this is America we're talking about. A lifelong injury is probably less devastating than the bill for an ambulance. There are also random assaults and muggings to deal with, but there's not much to say for that, except that I heard one happening during a cutscene once that made it sound like a woman really didn't want to pay for her pizza.
Get going!
Don't worry, Mr. Aziz.
And I guess I should mention the pizza minigame? Although that one's famous enough already, so whatever. The car chases have the same bones to them. You chase a car, interfere with the drivers in some way, and when they stop, there can be a fight. Somehow though, I've heard people say that 2018's and 2023's is worse. But seriously? In 2004, you have to manhandle Spidey's excessive momentum, especially difficult with the obligatory speed upgrades, to try and land on the moving car, probably overshooting it instead, before you give the windshield what for. A lot of the what for. 2018 makes it a lot more engaging. Admittedly, 2023 chose to make it far too easy.
Sure, 2018 could be a little inconsistent.
Like sometimes I'd fail the final button mash and wouldn't know why. But surely that would be an easy fix without tossing it all out the window. The worst part in 2018, and is a problem with many of the chase minigames, is waiting for the button prompt when you're practically on top of the damn car or the damn pigeon, often missing perfect opportunities to grab them, which actually moves me nicely into the traversal. Please note, I forgot to mention saving people from boats. It sucks. So here we are at last. The inflammatory part. Flammable. Inflammable. Flammable. Inflammable. Don't they mean the same thing? But the in prefix suggests no, Vivian, no. We can't put this off any longer. Just blame the Americans for brutalizing your language like you always do, and let's get on with this. The swinging in Spider-Man the Movie Game 2, 2004, isn't great. Revolutionary? Yes. For the time? Amazing. In the current day? No. I started to get the hang of it as I played, except that I kind of didn't, and I put that down to the obligatory purchases of the speed upgrades. Every time I started to get the hang of it, I'd be pressured into buying the upgrade in order to progress the story, and suddenly the jank would stand out again. In the late game, Spidey would often web completely the wrong building repeatedly, and it had become next to impossible to steer. As I mentioned with Mysterio, gaining altitude sucks, and you always swing noticeably lower than your starting point. This is usually countered with your charge jump, but that's not always enough. For example, if you want to gain speed, then you have to let go at the bottom of the swing so you rapidly lose height. Way too rapidly. Plus, gaining that height in an enclosed space with a hot or instant death floor? Not great. People like to talk about how it's physics based, but that's one, dumb if the game can't account for it. And two, in what universe? Because these physics certainly aren't ours. And then there are other tricks, but so what? Apparently it has more than 2018, but I really don't care about that. You can't talk about how great the swinging is for its, complexity? And then get all hyped about something that requires an optional button press but is completely superfluous. I never really care about the aerial tricks in any game, except Tony Hawk's, and I suck at those games. And using two web lines at once, hanging in the middle of a street, I found no use for that at all. Sure, it might lead into the slingshot, which is kinda cool, but hardly necessary with the web zip. I am planning on revisiting the game, so maybe I'll see if I can use that to kind of steer myself better, but it's just not that great. Frankly speaking, the more I played the game, the more I preferred jumping and web zips to actually swinging. But I did keep trying to see the good points. It is kind of fun to let your momentum swing you around a building, and I think that's why I really enjoyed swinging through trees. It just felt so fluid. But if you turn off swing assist in 2023, you get the same experience.
Sorry about the poor footage. Our brother is borrowing the PS5 copy, and our PC isn't good enough to run the game.
Actually, turning off swing assist makes the game feel like an improved 2004. You pull towards buildings more instead of swinging dead center through the streets. If you swing too low, you'll land instead of a game keeping you moving. Just be warned that because swing and free run use the same button, if you aren't expecting to land, then you'll probably disorientate yourself by free running over cars and other obstacles. Let's move on to the rest of the traversal before talking about sacred swinging gives me a panic attack. I really like that jumping while wall crawling does something different depending on if you are dashing or not.
Look at that butt wiggle.
If you're not dashing, then you'll jump off of the wall. If you are dashing, then you'll jump up it in place of a web zip. It's not much, and I'd rather keep the web zip, but it's neat. There is a problem with tiered buildings though. When you are jumping up a normal wall, you go up and down relative to your perspective, which defies physics, but it's a game, so that's fine. So a tiered building has about a meter from the wall you're jumping on to the wall you're landing on. And given how the physics usually works, you expect to just keep going over the edge and hitting that second wall. But Spidey doesn't. At a certain point, he does a flip as though shifting his momentum, but instead he loses all of it and falls down and slightly away from a target. And it's just like if you swing into a wall and press B to keep your momentum in a wall run, you'll end up backflipping off of the top and will likely have to crawl back up, probably slower so you don't make the same mistake again. It's not a big thing, just something that, given the devs wanted to show the sort of movement seen in the movies, just ends up slowing things down. I'm going to end this section on a positive, because despite my complaints,
which would have been far less if those comparisons hadn't embedded themselves into our brain,
I'm genuinely impressed. I mentioned this already, but it really is satisfying to swing between the trees, and I would plan routes to make the most of that. Your webs really do connect to the buildings and the objects you swing off of, and you can feel that in the swing. The charge jump was satisfying too, and playing 2018 before unlocking it really sucks after getting used to it. I'll fully finish up here by saying this isn't at all saying that 2004 is a bad game, because for the time, it really was amazing. And I was glad to see that 2023 obviously learned from it. The devs at Treyarch did a phenomenal job, and I really think we need to let it remain in 2004. Revisit occasionally, and stop the comparisons because it tarnishes both games. Really, the saying comparison is the thief of joy has never been so accurate. I won't be playing the story again because the bosses were just too frustrating, but I might swing around the city again on occasion and get into some fights. I'm curious to try the challenges that I skipped. Visuals and sound. This is my third time recording because I forgot to turn my microphone on. Twice. Boy, is this game ugly. And charming as all hell. The faces are all ugly without exception, in and outside of pre-rendered cutscenes. And the body language is just wrong. Dr. Connors, you should go see a medical doctor because a shoulder should not be moving like that. And I'm pretty damn sure this woman's neck is broken. It's all good, silly, naughty's fun. And I can, and inevitably will, talk about how annoying this modern focus on hyper-realism is. I want more ugly games like this, please. They're cheaper too, and faster to make. I have nothing really important to say about the visuals here. It's crazy impressive how well they made this vertical, open world, while ensuring that the game still runs really well. Despite how annoying it was, the animation for thugs dodging your webs is actually really neat, and you have a number of good looking animations in the fights. Plus, I think the thugs are well designed and all look great. In the early cutscenes, Ark looks really scruffy, and I think it's a shame that he cleans himself up pretty quick. Pete seems to wear a bit too much blue, and he removes his glasses for the pre-rendered cutscenes. Felicia's shorter hair took some getting used to, as that's not how she's usually presented, but I really think it suits this version of her. And she has those huge fucking stompers. The Rhino is tiny, Mysterio looks neat, and I like the fact that his drones have little fish bowls too. Onto the audio, this game improves massively on both its older brother and the movies that inspired it in the quips and banter.
Alright, fellas, show me the Monet.
Aw, I can't believe you just said that.
It gives Spidey and Felicia some real chemistry, and really helps give him more of a comic book feel. It's also helped by the fact that Toby did a much better job with his voice acting here.
Alright, fellas, show me the Monet.
Although I hesitate to say that, because I've never once heard Toby speak and thought, there's a guy who really emotes. Most of the returning movie cast are fine, with Bruce being the standout as usual.
You the woman?
So, I'm supposed to tell you something about sticking to walls. Let's see. Oh, I got it. You can stick to walls. You're Spider-Man. Yippee skippy.
Although Melina really is fantastic.
Get away from me, you traitor. What? Yeah. He wants to turn me into the police. Is this how you repay my friendship?
What was his name? Kidding. Josh Keaton reprises his role as Harry Osborn and is great once again. And amusingly, I heard the voice of the Spectacular Spider-Man's Harry, James Arnold Taylor.
Dad spent the whole trip locked in boardrooms, so I spent mine locked in boredom.
In the background a number of times.
I'm gonna take you down!
So it kind of felt like there were two Harrys in the game. Onto the music. Most of the time, if I noticed it, then it was because it felt out of place. The music by KMFDM never really felt like it fit, and the rest of the soundtrack simply didn't stand out. While I wouldn't say the soundtrack is bad, I mean, I was listening to it happily enough while writing this script, I will say it was spoiled by how standout the 2002 OST was. 2004 largely seems to lack the sense of identity that 2002 had. Still, I can definitely praise some of the songs, such as this one. And there's this one with the disconcerting name, but sick bass riff. The Felicia chases also had this really cool spy noir feel to them. And Mysterio had a bunch of campy theremin-filled songs that fit the goofy alien horror vibe he was clearly in love with. It's also worth mentioning that the Distillers were in this game, and we get to see graffiti on the walls to credit them? And I think that's it. Trivia. During the filming of the movie, Alfred Molina would practice talking to his arms as though they were real, and the puppeteers, because effects in those days were real and not all CGI, got a lot of practice responding to him, allowing for the supernaturalistic movements we saw in the movie. After you find all 213 hint markers in a game, Bruce will have different lines for each time you return to one. I'm not going to test that. I'm not going to get footage. I'll just take that random website's word for it. On the Chrysler building, you can find green feathers, referencing when you fought the Vulture here in the first game. Also, I wasn't going to bring this up because I thought it'd be a real pain to find it, but there is a neat sort of homage to the Twin Towers, where there are just two beams of light where they once stood. I think I found it. Again, I wasn't going to bother, but I was doing a bit of playing around to try and get a better idea of the swinging and combat before I committed to this video, and I figured I'd take a look around and found it. Apparently, if you slow down the inflatable clown's laughter during the Funhouse of Doom level, it sounds like the Green Goblin's laugh. I'm not convinced, so listen for yourself. The information I found actually said it's supposed to be detectable while using spider sense to slow down time, which I never did because, as you know by now, I do not like that mechanic. I wasn't going to go through those horrible Mysterio bits again just for that, and I'm not sure how much the spider sense actually slows things down, so I put that sample at half speed. This is the first game to actually have Aunt May in it, outside of basic references. In Times Square, there is a billboard for Chaos Skywriting, referencing the first game again, where you could see Chaos written in the sky. Which is great, because I've wondered about that ever since I played the first game. Quick correction, while every site I read told me that it was in Times Square, while doing my little swing around, I discovered that there's a few of them about. So I guess I am the authority on this. Kirsten Dunst was given the final say over her character model in the game, and she insisted that they reduce the breast size. I'm not going to put on a voice. I got to approve the video game, the way she looks. They made her boobs gigantic. I was like, tone down the boobs, please. It was a little ridiculous. And yeah, you remember Felicia's kitties?
We really didn't want to say puppies.
Seriously though, the more I look at trivia for these movies and games, the more I respect Kirsten Dunst as a person. Conclusion. Spider-Man the Movie Game 2, 2004 is a good game, and you will not find me denying that. It was an early open world game and was the first to tackle the challenge of adding enormous amounts of verticality, and yet it functions wonderfully. The often janky combat is a solid attempt at upgrading from a 2002 game, which itself was originally planned as a PS2 port of the 2000s games.
We would kill, skin, and devour someone for a chance to play that game.
The swinging was not just revolutionary, but like many of the minigames, it crafted the bones for later entries to refine and polish. I'm truly looking forward to playing the 2007 game and Web of Shadows for this very reason. It had improved voice acting, enjoyable banter and quips, and I really loved the original story. I'm deeply upset that I had to play this game for the first time, with those inane and bloody stupid comparisons stapled to my grey matter. It is most definitely a game of its time, and one its developers should be immensely proud of. It is really stupid to keep comparing this game to its much younger cousins in terms of gameplay, and people doing that are really just tarnishing each's reputation. Of course, if you're doing this because you don't like the politics, then fuck you for having your head so far up your own ass that you can only see the world through your own shit-stained eyes. Story inspirations. So here's something fun. It is frustratingly common for something I don't particularly like to inspire me more than something that I do. CW Flash and Ruby are my go-to examples. But even something like Physical Pain would do the same. Over a decade ago, I started a story that I honestly really need to get back to, simply because at the time I had eczema over my eyes in the shape of a domino mask. And I want to use my current severe eczema.
Yes, that's its official name. That's what the dermatologist called it. And we're actually on immunosuppressants to try and treat it.
To try and expand on it. So while the Insomniac Spider-Man games often give me a desire to write a nimble, usually spider-themed character, it's here with 2004 where I got some real ideas. 1. A villain's financial downfall. Like seriously. Mysterio goes from renting the sports arena, setting up elaborate obstacle courses and building drones, and faking a UFO invasion, to robbing a freaking corner store. There's something really fun there that the game didn't get to expand on. A would-be supervillain whose plans for fame and reputation are foiled again and again until he's bankrupt, and only has the means for small-scale robberies to try and rebuild his capital. It would, however, be a subplot in another story, with the villain popping up with large-scale crimes at first, only to get smaller and smaller, his equipment getting shoddier as he has to repair rather than replace, until he's desperate and small-time. It's kind of a sad, tragic story of a person's efforts being in vain, only with a comical twist because, you know, he's a bad guy. 2. The Two Harrys. This one was inspired by, of all things, having two Harry Osborn voice actors in the game. It would have been a continuation of Harriet from my first story, dealing with two villains, Electro and Mysterio, while a fake Harriet/Hobgoblin is flying around town. I could have expanded on Jess as a character, writing from her point of view, and might even have included a fake Petra. The fake Petra could have been a setup for the real Petra showing up in a later story, casting doubt on her authenticity because of what happened here. That would be incredibly comic book. Oh, and Electro and Mysterio would be the same person. The latter would be able to power his illusions while distracting attention away from himself with the shallow but dangerous Electro persona. This could somewhat make up for the fact that as much as I like him, Electro never has been the most fleshed out character. But this would be long, and as I learned writing the first Harriet story, I need to keep these shorter. 3. The dramatic reveals. Twice during the game, I felt that there could have been a cool dynamic between the characters if Peter spontaneously gave himself away. I also briefly discussed one of these during the Storytime section. How would things change if, when Mary Jane told Peter she was with someone else, he spotted the gallery theft and leapt into the action right there? I mentioned the angle of the two having their own journeys of discovery back at the start of the story. But there's another element I neglected, where while Pete showed MJ that he wasn't quite what he seemed, he might not have made it so clear as to outright reveal himself as the Spider-Man. We could leave MJ with some reasonable doubt. I mean, it's Puny Parker after all. He can't be Spider-Man. But what other options are there? We don't have a pantheon of superheroes running around New York. He can only be Spider-Man, but it's Puny Parker. You'd be surprised the circles that person can run around themselves in denial, and it could be really fun to explore. But part of this recontextualization of their relationship would be that upside down kiss. Someone she knew, a friend, was hiding behind a mask and kissed her. I don't know about you, but personally I'd see that as a serious violation of our friendship. And the second time where Peter could have done this was when Ock had them both in his grasp at their cafe. A quick web shot, possibly not being seen by Ock himself, but definitely by MJ, and then he tackles the villain then and there. You could do a number of things at this point. Maybe this outs Pete to the entire city. Or maybe there could just be rumours of Spidey fighting out of costume, or a second Spider-themed hero. Either way, MJ would know. And this time she might not have enough time to process it, unlike the previous point. She might even outright reject him. Plus, one thing I forgot to mention for both of these ideas is how she would have to interact with Harry from here on out. I can't remember if Spider-Man 3 addresses this or not. 4. Kiss Chase. This is the idea that I'm actually going to use, mainly because it should be shorter than the other ideas. So, Felicia gets kind of cocky about staying ahead of our hero, despite us clearly struggling not to overtake her. So in my head, this idea started to form where the hero is, like us, staying back to find out what she's up to, maybe trying not to scare her off and figure her out. But then things get dangerous, and the hero not only manages to keep up with her, but stays right on her tail Mr. X style. You know in movies when the pursued spins around and is unable to find them, only to walk right into their pursuer? That, but with the hero being the pursuer. God, I don't know if I even have the skill to write that level of intimidation properly, but I've already started writing, so this is going to be the one for the video. Personal notes. I don't really have any personal notes that I need to bring up, but I might as well use this section, so here. I would appreciate recommendations for a good AV to HDMI upscaler, as mine isn't that great, and the really good ones are well beyond my budget. And I also would like a decent microphone that doesn't take up too much space. And when I say it doesn't take up much space, I fucking mean it, because I'm currently using a lavalier microphone. It's not amazing, and I think it actually makes my voice sound worse than it is, although I am looking into getting therapy or training for my speech anyway, because my dyspraxic ass mouth isn't very good. Sorry gents, ladies. I did watch a video or two before I bought my lavalier, and it seemed good enough to start with, but I'm just not satisfied. Other than that, I'm glad to have this video over, and thanks for watching. If you have criticism about my video, something you don't like, something I could do better, let me know. Yes, that's right. I'm asking for trolls. Criticism is how creatives get better. But please be clever about it, because if you are too obvious in your trolling, I'll do the opposite. Be clever and trick me. Try it.